Yesterday in the press conference, Paul Warne was discussing captaincy, and we obviously saw our captain Curtis Davies leave at the back end of Paul Warne's first season. We saw Conor Hourihane leave at the back end of the second season. And we now see Nathaniel Mendez Laing taking the armband into the season. Now, obviously, if we go back to last year, it was done by a vote between the players, but that has not been the case this year, according to Paul Warne via BBC Radio Derby. And it's just been given to Mendes-Laing based on, I think it was something to do with performances on and off the pitch, things like that. And I think I'm not entirely surprised that Mendes-Laing has the armband. I think, and the way it's passed around a bit, I think there's a lot to talk about within the Derby County squad when it comes to captaincy. But before we do get into that, make sure you hit that subscribe button down below and turn on that notification bell to stay tuned for all of my latest Derby County and EFL Championship and League One content heading your way. Of course, we're trying to hit 1,300 subscribers, so make sure you hit that red button and we keep pushing forward. So, obviously, to talk about the captaincy, and I really think the armband is more of a token gesture than anything else, especially within a Paul Warne squad and especially within a team like Derby County. And to be honest with you, I think within most teams, I think if you were to speak to any managers, any bunch of coaching staffs, any bunch of analysts, I think they'd probably say that in every single dressing room there is a ton of different leaders in a ton of different areas that do a ton of different things. Now, obviously, having the armband gives you certain responsibilities, but it's not as if those responsibilities can't be delegated and shared about within not necessarily experienced heads, but even the younger heads in the group. And in my opinion, the big thing that I look to is you look back to Max Bird when he broke through into the first team. He was the first one of that cohort of players which broke in, and I remember him talking vaguely with BBC Radio Derby, with Rams TV, about him not being a captain per se at first, but he was the captain of the young lads. He helped keep them in check with the first team, because obviously Bird had been around it longer than them and things like that, and he was sort of who they'd go to as the player who broke through first. And I think that's what we're going to see within this group. I think you obviously look at the likes of Jake Rooney, Erin Cashin, Liam Thompson as the sort of leader of the young heads, and then you look at the likes of obviously you look at Sonny Bradley, you look at Curtis Nelson, you look at Mendes-Laing, you look at James Collins as the leaders for those older experienced heads in the group. And obviously you've got players who have had experience at different levels, you've got players who have been through different things at different clubs. You obviously look at someone like Craig Forsyth, who in my opinion should be named club captain. That's just my opinion. I think he's part of the furniture. I know he probably doesn't necessarily want the armband or want captaincy. Maybe he does, maybe he doesn't. But I think realistically, he knows the club inside and out. If anyone has any questions and you're a player, who are you going to go to? You go to a Craig Forsyth, in my opinion. You'd go to, and even if you're a member of staff at Moor Farm, at Pride Park, who are you going to go to if you want to learn more about the role you're in and the people you're working with? You go to the person who's been there the longest, and you want to learn from people who have the most experience. And that's something which I think we're seeing over the course of this season, especially when you look at who the armband's being passed to. It's gone from Mendes-Laing, it's gone to Cashin, it's gone to Sonny Bradley. I think Curtis Nelson has had it for stretches. And it's one of them for me where I personally don't put much impetus onto that whole captaincy debacle of who is named club captain, who's vice captain, because I think at the end of the day, a proper built squad should have a defensive leader, should have a midfield leader, should have an attacking leader, and who sort of guides people through the games, because there's only so much that Paul Warne and the coaching staff can do on the sideline. There's a lot more that you can do when you're within it, in my opinion. And obviously not to anywhere near the same level. I've held the captaincy at when I've played football, grassroots, and sort of through college and things like that. And I think the importance of the armband for me doesn't make much of a difference. I think there's certain players who may thrive off having the armband. I think if you look at Tom Lawrence, I think he arguably had his best season in a Derby County shirt when he was skipper. And a lot of people frowned upon that decision from Wayne Rooney to make Tom Lawrence captain, but I think sometimes certain players need that responsibility to be able to push their game forward and show what they are truly, truly capable of. And I think if you go back to, even if you go back to the likes of like Richard Keogh and things like that, I think at times the captaincy got the better of his performance, and because he wanted to take charge and sort of hold himself to a higher regard, I think at times it costs him in big moments. I think I can't remember exactly if he was captain for that Wembley playoff final, but you've got that, and you obviously have the period where a lot of people called him Calamity Keogh, and I think there was a period in time where whenever Keogh had the ball, it was a big worry for people. Now, for me, I think a lot of that was down to captaincy. When you look at the managers that took the captaincy off him and gave it to other people, I think he was arguably, during that period at Derby County up until his injury, I think he was one of the best defenders in the league. And I do think the injury took a lot of the stuffing out of him, really. And I think that's something which is something that needs to be looked at, because in my opinion, I'm not saying he was the greatest defender to ever play in the Championship, but I think he certainly held an edge over a ton of opponents in this division, and he held his own against anyone and everyone, even in cup competitions. And I think if we go back to the current captaincy, I think that is maybe what we're missing in this squad. Obviously, we're going through a big rebuild phase, but I think Paul Warne's got an excellent sort of brain in him to sort of leave the decision with Mendes-Laing at the moment, because I think if you look at the performances he put in last season, I don't necessarily think he's had the output this season yet, but he didn't start scoring till October last year, so it's one of those for me where I think Mendes-Laing certainly leads by example in the way that he plays on the pitch. I think he works hard. I think he puts in excellent performances. I think we still haven't seen the best of him this season, and obviously he's coming towards that back end of his career. It's going to be really interesting to see how this captaincy discussion and argument goes over the course of the season. I know a lot of people wanted Nelson, a lot of people wanted Cashin, a lot of people wanted Forsyth. I'm probably in the boat of where I think Forsyth should be sort of named captain, Cashin should be named vice captain, because I think realistically, if we develop as much as we want over the course of the next 5 years, I can't see Cashin leaving unless there's a stupid, ridiculous offer that comes in. And I think realistically, I can see Cashin being the captain of this club in the future. So it's going to be interesting to see what does happen. Obviously, let me know your thoughts down in the comments. I think it's not necessarily a dilemma for Paul Warne. I think it's a brilliant decision by him to leave it with Mendes-Laing, who led by example over the course of last season, and realistically through pre-season is one of those players who I think is excellent in a physical capacity, is excellent at a technical capacity. I think it's sort of at that age where you're not really going to improve in many areas. So it's one of those where it's going to be really interesting to see how he does over the course of this season. Not quite hit the ground running yet in the Championship, but let me know your thoughts down below. Smash that subscribe button, turn on that notification bell, and I'll catch you in my match review tomorrow after Sheffield United. Make sure to go and find me on TikTok, pictured here, and Twitter, pictured here. These are the places where I'll keep you all up to date with all my upcoming videos and my thoughts and feelings around the Formula 1 and Football Week.